Good morning. We just had a blizzard, and so I have a work from home day. What I'm going to do is do an alcohol ink project. Shouldn't take very long. A lot of people are interested in doing alcohol ink, and I've had a lot of experience working with it. But at any rate, what I'm going to do is show you how I work with alcohol ink, and also maybe with some acrylics. And I'm going to show you what the project's going to be. So I have this window here, which is kind of a portal. It doesn't actually open. I don't know if anybody's seen Howl's Moving Castle, but he has a kind of a thing by his door where he pulls a chain and it changes the dimension that the door opens to. So what I thought I'd do is kind of emulate that in a way and make some alcohol ink pieces that fit over the panes of glass. So these are the tools that I use to do alcohol ink projects. And I have a mixture of Jacquard, Ranger, and Adirondack inks. And you can kind of tell by looking at the bottles that this is not a particularly tidy type of hobby. The next thing that I use is I've got a oil-based pencil that allows me to make lines that resist the alcohol ink when I put it on the paper, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Acrylic pens, and these are white, and that helps me to outline some things after the alcohol ink is dry. Oh, and this is Yupo. It's pretty transparent, and Yupo comes in different brands. The light blue one is the translucent, as it says. And so what that will do is allow me to put it on those glass panes, hopefully, and the light will come through. What I've done is put down a couple of sheets of heavy paper because alcohol ink will stain, and I have stained this table before and I'd rather not. I need to make 6 of these things, and I probably can get maybe 1 or 2 from each one of these sheets. What I'm going to do is just kind of do some random stuff over these pages. And I was telling you about these oil pencils and their value to this work. They resist the alcohol ink, creating these nice kind of spaces and lines and things. So really, and it's a little bit hard to be able to see, but I'm just going to make some various random lines, and then I will kind of identify where one is and kind of work off that to create these spaces and shapes on the piece of paper, and that will enable me to create these different spaces and things like that. And so really that's probably enough for this particular thing, this particular page. So I'm going to start with the blue. We'll just start putting it down. And really this is kind of a situation where you can just kind of layer this stuff in and put enough on there so that it starts to move around a little bit. Here's a line for sure, so we'll try to get up right on it. Actually, I think I have a better idea. And now I've gotten this darker substrate, and now I don't know if you can see, but I can easily see the white lines. So that will be very helpful to me as I try to create these shapes or outline them more accurately. So and alcohol ink is something that, it's not exactly something that you can, it doesn't take orders. It does what it wants. And so you have to kind of let it do what it's going to do. I know that sometimes I've tried to make things that are a
a little bit more involved and detailed with it, and I always end up kind of disappointed in the results because, like I said, it just kind of does what it wants to do. It goes where it wants to go. And so working with it in a more fluid sort of manner, I think is a lot smarter. In this case, I might switch up a little bit and do a different color. Here's a teal. Let's try that. See what that does. Looks very dark. I am pretty satisfied with that, and this is kind of the stage at which you want to leave it alone. It dries very quickly because, as its name implies, it's mostly alcohol, and so the liquid in it evaporates very quickly. That said, it takes about 20 minutes or so for it to get set. What I'm going to do is set this aside and move on to the next one. Now this is my fresh sheet. I'm going to repeat the same process, but maybe do some things a little different. Let's go flamingo. See what that looks like. You can kind of see how it goes up to the line and then it stops. And that creates some negative space, which is really attractive, I think. And then later can reinforce that with the acrylic pen. I really like this, how this is turning out. I'm going to go for, I've got some of this shell color, which is a kind of more faint pink. I'm going to just not use a lot of that because it's, I don't know. Alright. Pink sherbet. That sounds good. Oh. Not exactly what I was thinking. Again, sparing. My favorite, which is the pinata, the jacquard pink. Kind of hot pinks. See, and this is one of the differences amongst some of the inks is that the jacquard has, I don't know, a little less flowy consistency to it in my way of thinking. and so it kind of pools up a little bit more, which is something that can be useful, but you know, I don't like the texture of this one as much as I do the Adirondacks and the Rangers. I like the colors better though, sometimes. It's complicated, you know, what are we gonna do? Got watermelon. Yeah, not as much of a fan of this one as the blue one, but in the end, what we're gonna do is cut them up anyway, so it really doesn't matter that much. On to the next one. So this one's gonna be green. And of course, you could always just use this and just drop it on a piece of Yupo and do that. Also, interestingly enough, these work on metal and they work on glass too. And I've seen people do some pretty cool stuff with that. I'm going to try this citrus, which is one of the Ranger inks. I think that might be the... Oh, we used one of them the last time around. Oh, that looks like my lawn. I don't know about that. Let me turn this around so y'all can see what I'm going to do. But when I load it up here, I can take advantage of gravity to kind of do a little bit of my work for me. So let's see if we can I can live with that. Yeah, I like that. Is it wasteful? Maybe, but that's art, right? So now I've messed this whole thing up. We've now entirely moved away from canon of the Howl's Moving Castle window for sure. That one is black, red, green, and blue. We're not doing black. Our green is certainly an interpretation, and as is our red, which you could do, but that's not what I want to do. So. I think this needs a couple pops of an entirely different color. So I'm going to use my go-to shocker type thing and put some little pink blobs in here. Just some random spots. And if it gets in with the other ink, you know, that's what it wants to do. Ooh, I like that. Look at that. Look at how that looks. That's going to be great. We're just going to leave that. Just like so. Now see, if I went back and let this dry and then started working with again, I could do that. But it loses, there's a shininess to them when you see them in person that is really quite striking. And you don't want to, I don't want to lose that. For me, it depends on what you're doing, I suppose. But I find it a lot more effective to just, if you've done something and you don't like it, just do something else. Just do it again. More so than trying to fix something. Because in my experience, that always ends up in a disaster. And then, so now we're on the 5th one. I got this purpley stuff. I guess I can try that. So why don't we do some solid ones just to kind of see what happens. So this is something else you can do with these. Is just make some big puddles of it and then let it kind of run together. To me, alcohol ink is what watercolor should be. See, look at that. That's pretty damn cool, I think. Try that. Let's just make a kind of a pool, some pools of this around. See what it does when it interacts with the periwinkle. Interesting. I was going to show you something that might be kind of cool for this, is that you can imprint patterns onto the ink as it's drying when you use like a paper towel or something, because all of them have like little patterns on it and stuff. And so it's kind of this is sort of a watercolor technique for sure, but to lend it a little organic kind of flavor, I think is not necessarily a bad thing here. And you'll notice how it's still pretty wet, so it's running together and kind of obscuring that a little bit, but yet leaving an impression behind. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's pretty. Let's see what we can get if we just make some circles. And we're just going to kind of splatter some around and try to avoid the circles as best we can, or surround them to some extent without being too crazy. I'm not going to do much more with this. Let's try one kind of obscure one and see what we get if we just put some in the middle. Ooh, I kind of like that, actually. That will be intriguing. I'm going to stop now for this, and I'm going to let these dry for at least a half an hour. If you were in a huge hurry, or just, I'm like me and impatient, you could dry them off with a hair dryer. Set on low, that's enough, and dry them off like that. It would go quicker, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go wash my hands. I actually let these dry overnight, and as you can see, they're completely set up. Get an idea of the translucent nature of it. This is that kind of experimental one where we used the paper towel. Here's I think this was the second one we did, and that turned out pretty well. This one is really good. This was the first one that we took a stab at, and you can see those are those lines where I used the oil pencil that resisted that and created that kind of dimensionality. Here's this one. I really like this part of it. I'm not as much of a fan of over here. This one turned out okay. Kind of looks like a pond or something. That turned out pretty well, I think, for what we're trying to do. And then finally, this one, which again, I like the way this turned out too. So what the next thing to do is to start using the acrylic to kind of reinforce some of that. These are the acrylic pens, the Molotow pens. They're a little pricey, but they do last for a long time. And so I've got a thicker one, which I may or may not use, and then I've got the finer tipped one. And you do have to shake these quite a bit when you start using them, because it takes a minute. And also you got to put down some pressure. And yep, looks like we're getting there. So let's do a little test over here. Yep, it's all good. So then what I could do, here on this one, find a couple spots like here. I think you can see this. Like right here, the ink overflowed the line. Well, we can cover that back up. And it's not going to be perfect, but to the casual viewer, they certainly would never know. So you're kind of hiding crimes, I guess, in a way. See, and this negative space really helps us, I think. And acrylic dries pretty fast, but you do have to kind of watch out that you don't stick your hand in it. Fortunately, I haven't. And I can clean up some of these spots where it got rough if I want to. There are times where you don't want that. You want that texture to be a little firmer. But a little bit here and there doesn't hurt. Kind of reinforces that negative space. Also, Sam's sleeping again. This is his post-breakfast nap. One thing that is something I learned some time ago is that when I'm working on things, it's often useful to take a picture with your phone and look at it. Look at the photograph, as you're working, because that can really reveal some things that need cleaning up or reinforcement or whatever. And many of these things are so subjective, it's actually impossible to know what someone else's perception of something is. You can talk about it. Whenever I've asked people what they think a particular piece looks like to them, it's always really entertaining. I've heard some great stories. All right, so I think we're cleaned up on that one. And see, one could be tempted to go get, I have green ones of these, and to reinforce that pond look. That way, monsters lie, in my opinion. Just highlight some things a little tiny bit. I want to clean up some of this ragged edge stuff because I really enjoy this part and these kind of clean lines in this particular piece. The messier parts I'm not as much of a fan of. So I'm going to use the big one this time. And just let's see if you can, yeah, you'll be able to see that. So in this case, I'm going to try to kind of fill in some of this rough part and smooth it over. A lot of these things, no one would ever notice this who saw it for the first time. I see it. I guess is the thing. It would bother me for a while if I didn't do this part of it. And that's part of kind of the fun and the meditation of it, is that I'm talking to everybody here while I'm doing this, but normally when I was working on something like this, I wouldn't be talking at all. I would just be really intently focused on this, and that's it. That's meditation, folks. It's good for you. Yeah, a little bit of cleanup here and there. I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'm going to leave that one be just like that. I'm not going to say this is like one of my favorite things, but I think for the purposes of what we're doing with that that window, I think this might be actually one of the better ones to use. But I guess we'll see. So we're done with that. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to measure and cut out these pieces for the triangular window. All right, you can kind of see out here what we're dealing with. Got about probably at least 10 inches and probably more like a foot of snow, and in sort of 3 relatively lengthy waves, and now the temperatures are plummeting as we get the polar vortex. But anyway, this is that window that we were talking about, and I had a brainwave about how to capture those shapes, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. All right, so what I decided to do is get some tin foil and then just kind of mash it up into this shape, because you've got curves and you've got all kinds of things. So I'm going to turn off the camera for a second so I can do this with both hands, and then I'll show you what I got. Okay, so that idea sucked. That's better. It's still not perfect, but it's good enough for government work, I would say. So I have my shape, and so now what I want to do is try to identify a portion of this which feels the best to me for this exercise. And I think on this particular one, it's in this kind of central area. I'm going to trace around just a little bit bigger than what the shape is. So now we got our piece to slice on that one, and I'm going to go through the others and do the same thing. Okay, I have traced that shape a little oversized on each one, and I'm going to now cut those shapes out, and they are a little bit bigger than what I need. I can always cut back, but I don't want to be confronted with the impossibility of adding 2. All right, look at that. We've got all of our stuff here that we cut out, And then here's the individual pizza slices that we will, I'm going to put into those window spots here in a second. I really like how that one turned out. That's really nice. And this one too, frankly. So the next thing that you'll see is me having completed this. All right, there it is. I think that it turned out very well. I haven't taped them in. I'm going to get some double-sided tape to put them in. There are some spots where, you know, my cutting wasn't quite as precise as I wanted it to be, so I might trim these up just slightly. But I could leave them just like this too, because frankly, again, they look great and they kind of stuck in there pretty effectively, just like that. But you can get the sense of, you know, now that light's off, like that's pretty cool, right? And the light's shining through it a little bit. This window faces north, so I'm not getting complete light, but some diffuse light. I think this looks really cool, and I hope you enjoy this kind of thing. I do a lot of varied content, but if you enjoyed this and talking about art and creativity and different things like that, I definitely do some of that content. So please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for spending some time with me today.